Well, good morning or early afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Kaylin. I am on the product team here at Simple Consign, and I actually started out my Simple Consign journey as a customer, working in a three-store company out in Atlanta. Custom reports and the reporting in Simple Consign has always been one of my favorite features, and like I said last week, I would often get in trouble for looking at the reports instead of sweeping like I'd been told. So let's dive in here. Last week we talked about these pre-built reports that are available in the report section of the back office. So we've got all of these pre-built ones for you to explore. And if you'd like to take a look at that webinar, it should be available on our website. Down here under the custom reports heading, we have all of these custom report bases that we can start with, and then we can add our own fields and filters to be able to fine tune exactly what information displays. So for an example, I'm going to go into our consignor custom report, and this will give us the ability to add fields and filters. Fields are the information that you want to be able to see, and filters are how you want to restrict that information. So as an example, I can click in here and there's all of these fields available to me using this consignor custom report base. So an example of a report we might want to do is, let's do consignor ID. I'm going to start typing in field names to make it easier. And I'm going to click first name, last name. Maybe I want to see, what do we want to see? We want to see what their email is. Maybe we want to do a report to be able to export our email addresses of our consignors, and we only want to get consignors who have an email address entered into the system. So we're going to say email is not blank, and then if we run this report, we should get all of our consignors who are in the system who do not have blank emails. So that gives us 25 results in this test store here. And if I wanted to export this, I could say export as CSV, and that'll export it into a Excel-like format, which would then allow me to take that over to an email marketing platform and email these consignors. If, for example, we wanted to add an additional restriction like last activity date, and maybe I want that to be the first column so I can drag and move things around so you can change the order. And maybe I want to add a restriction of last activity date. So last activity date would be if you're on the consignment tab over here and you're looking at the account activity, it would be the last date that an activity entry was created for that consignor, whether it's a fee that's been auto added by the system, a monthly fee, a payout, any of that type of activity that shows up here is going to be the last entry date. You can also see that listed here in this column. All right, so let's flip back over here. Last activity date is, and let's say we just want people who've been active this year. So if we run that, there we go. Now that restricted our list a little bit more, and you can see that all of these dates are February and March. If I wanted to then save this report so I could reference it again later, I could click Save Report, and I can give this custom report a name. So we're going to do consignor emails recent activity. And if I wanted to add a report description, I could. So I could say custom consignor report with email addresses and last activity after, or let's do in 2025. So now if I save that, the report is going to get pulled over here, and it would help if I didn't already forget what I called it. Consignor emails, recent activity. There it is. So now when I click on it again, you can see that that description that I entered is listed right here. It'll help give some context, especially if someone other than the person who made the report is going to run it. And they can just click run again, and there it is. Now at this point, if you want to make any changes to it, you want those changes to save, you would make those changes, whether it's adding a field, removing a field, whatever you want to do. Maybe you just want to get rid of the consignor's ID. You would then click Update Report and then Save. And the next time you load that report, those changes would be reflected. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions about any of that, those steps that we took? Alrighty. So now I'm going to go find a different custom report base and show you some other things we could do. Let's see. Ooh, let's do a custom transaction report. So here, transaction meaning like a transaction that you had with your customers. So there's all sorts of information about your sales and here, different payment methods, all of this. So let's say maybe we want the date. Let's find that. Sold date and the time and the invoice number. Maybe we want the total, subtotal, and tax information. And maybe we want to find all invoices or all transactions that had a cash component. Now, one of the cool things about these custom fields and filters is we have cash, we have change, and we have tendered. So let me pull all three of those fields in. Tendered. In this case, cash, change, and tendered. Tendered is how much was given to the cashier. So maybe they were given a $20 bill for a $15 transaction. Change would be $5 because they would have been given $5 back. Cash would be 15. So cash plus change should equal tendered. So maybe we want to do cash is greater than 0. And we run this. Oh, and there are all of our invoices with dates and times that have a cash value on them. So kind of thinking back to our webinar last week, our Lunch and Learn, where we talked about pre-built reports and the end of day report. And maybe your totals are off by a little bit in the cash value, and you want to look at all of your transactions throughout the day that were involved cash as a payment type. You could then build a custom report in order to see all of those really easily, and that would allow you to kind of troubleshoot where that mistake might have happened. So if we do and sold date is the 19th, there's our one cash transaction. So if we were off when we ran the end of day at the end of the day and our cash value, it is likely due to a miscount in the change provided or the amount of money tendered in this transaction. So all sorts of really cool things you can do here. As you can see with the combination of fields and filters, this is kind of endlessly flexible, and you can build all sorts of different reports to meet your needs. I see a question in here though. A large majority of our inventory is new. So how do I create a report showing all items currently active in store inventory? That is a fantastic question. All right, so there's a couple of different inventory bases that we could start with. I like to call these options listed here report bases because they're laying the foundation of our report. So we've got inventory, we have sold inventory, we have sold online inventory, supplier inventory. In this case, we're probably going to want to start with inventory because we don't want to look at just things that have sold, and we probably don't want to look at just things that have a supplier attached to them. So we'll start here, and let's look at some fields and filters. I'm going to make some assumptions about data that would be helpful for you. Let's see, SKU, item name, store-owned inventory. So store-owned inventory allows you to add data into your minimum stock and your maximum stock. So we could look at that. We could do on-hand quantity and see how many we currently have in stock. Let's see. We might want the cost and the retail. And you'll notice that when I added cost, it added total cost because it's going to multiply the cost by the total quantity you have. So it'll tell you the total cost for the available inventory you have. Same concept with retail and total retail. For me personally, I don't like having those fields there, but that is how you add them in if you would like them to be there. And let's do category. All right. And we want just store-owned inventory. So store-owned inventory in our system is added via the inventory tab right here. So in a multi-location company, you would select your location and then you would add your inventory. And this gives you the ability to enter inventory that doesn't have a consignor attached, but you also get some additional fields like cost. And then when you go in and you enter your store-owned inventory, so let's filter it here, store-owned items, you would then also be able to enter a minimum stock level and a maximum stock level. So this would say you wanted to always have a minimum of 5 of these on hand, and you don't want to have more than 10 on hand, then you could save that. And when we run this custom report, you could add a filter to give you a heads up on whether your on-hand quantity is greater than, less than, equal to your minimum stock. So really cool there. That's this on-hand quantity comparison. Getting back to the requested one though, we want is consigned. So is this item consigned? We want that to be false. Not consigned items. So then if we run this report, assuming that there is not too much inventory in here, there we go. So there's our list of all of our store-owned inventory. You're welcome. And if you wanted to get the inventory status in here as well, you could do status. So we can add that as another column. And then we could do status is equal to, and then you can list out active status here. Another thing that you might find helpful is if you want in stock, you can do on hand quantity is greater than 0. And that'll restrict it even further. So this is how you can start building those reports. And then same as before, you can save this report and use it as a reference later on. I see another question. How do you run a report for a given date range, not a single date? For example, one that lists all inventory sold in a specific month. That is a fantastic question. So in that case, we don't want to use the inventory report. We'd want to use the sold inventory report base. So we'll flip on over there. And again, I'm going to make some guesses on what you would like in that information or what would be helpful fields for you. So we're going to do name, category. You probably want sold price. You might want sold time. Let's move that up there. Sold date, let's put that up there. And then we can do quantity sold. So we'll do that. Get rid of total sold price. And we could put the invoice number on there. You can even put, let's take a look at all of these fields real quick. So all sorts of information. You can put the payout amount, so this is the amount that the consignor received for that item. You can put which user was signed in when that transaction went through, when that item was sold, which terminal it was sold on. If you attached a customer to the transaction, you can get the customer's information as well. All sorts of really cool information in here. The consignor attached to that inventory, so we can do the consignor ID. And then I think I also saw consignor full name, so instead of having to add both of these fields, you can do that. So now we want sold date is, so say we wanted sold date for February. So we want to do is after, and I think we can do the first there, sold date and sold date is before March 1st. And that should give us February. So there's all of that information for those items, which invoice they were on, what date they were sold, the quantity, how much they were sold for, which consignor they belong to, for our items sold during the month of February. So you would just combine two sold date filters and sandwich the time period that you want in between those filters. Does that help? Perfect. Let's see, what else do we have going on in here? Is there a way to run a purchase history report for store inventory entered during a period? So this sounds like a buyout right type of report for a buyout right style store. Is that correct? Okay. So that will be inventory. And are you using buy transactions? You're purchasing them through the checkout screen, through the terminal? No? Okay. Let's see. So it sounds like you're probably entering the inventory directly in on this inventory tab. If you were entering the items through the buy process on the terminal side of the software, we would be able to filter by, where's that field? Is it by count? And so you'd be able to see the total quantity that you've purchased. And so that's a different type of transaction. I'm not sure if we have any in here. Let's back it up a bit. Yeah, so we've got these buy transactions. And so that's where you purchase items from a customer, and you can add a cost and then also set the price of the item. And this is all compatible with our Pricebook tool as well. If you're entering it in directly into the system, that'll be a little bit different. And that would probably be, you'd have to look at your inventory and know how you would distinguish that from other types of items. So you could say SKU, item name, cost. Maybe we want the category. We want the on-hand quantity. We want the retail. Let's get rid of total retail. Let's do that. And then you might want date created. That's probably how we're going to filter this. So you'd say date created is after, and we're going to do the same date sandwiching. So we're going to do, I think we can do February 1st, and then date created is before March 1st. And we want to use that is consigned filter like we did last time, is consigned false. And if we run that report in this test row, that brings us back 5 items. But these would be 5 items that were entered as store-owned inventory during this time period. So this is when they were originally created. Does that help? You're welcome. These are some really good examples. Customer report, top customers. Is that one that we have in here? Yes. All right, let's take a look at that. So this is one of my favorite reports because it allows you to recognize the people who've spent the most money in your store. So if you, when you're completing a transaction at checkout, if you are adding customers to your transaction, that will allow you to track how much money people are spending in your store. So for example, if we go look at a customer entry here, we can single click on them and it'll pull up this information off to the right. We record how much money they've spent in your store all time for transactions that they've been attached to, as well as running totals for the last 12 months, 30 days, and the last month, as well as the last year. So we can then use that information in a custom customer report. So this is using the customer report base with these fields. And we're just saying the purchase total for the last year is greater than $0. And when we run that, let's put these fields in a different order so that we can see that. There we go. Now you have all of your customers who've spent money in your store in the last year, and then you can always click on these headers in order to change the order. So because this is a number value, I clicked on it so that I could get the highest value at the top. So that means that this customer account has spent nearly $7,000 in the last year. You're welcome. Yeah, that's a really cool report. It allows you to recognize people who've been loyal customers. It also allows you to learn about purchasing patterns in your store, see who's repeat customers. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff with that information. When they are buying, you set them up. So you can create customers in a variety of ways. You can add them outside of a transaction by going to your customer tab, and this is available in either the terminal or the back office, depending on how you have your terminals configured. Some stores will elect to have that hidden, but you just enter your customer information here. The only fields that are required are first and last name, but I encourage collecting an email or a phone number if that is information you'd like to have on hand. You can also do this in the terminal side of the software. So if we go into the terminal, you can do it here, but you can quick add a customer as you're ringing up a transaction. So let's say we were selling, let's sell some leggings. I'm going to copy that SKU, paste it, and let's say we wanted to track the customer for this transaction. We could do, ooh, there's all sorts of names in here. Look at that. All right, we're going to sell it to Sarah. And when we complete the transaction, it'll be attached to Sarah. But if our person wasn't entered in the system yet, so my name is pretty uncommon. It looks like there's not any other customers in here with that name. So I could enter in my information, and this is a quick add screen. And so I can choose to enter in email, phone, loyalty ID. So think of like CVS and Walgreens, you know, those little barcode tags you get. You can do that. Or I can enter in the tax exempt information if this is a tax exempt customer. But then if I click create new customer, I now have a customer account and can start tracking that information. And this exact same process works if you're doing a buy transaction instead. So a buy transaction would be using buy items instead of sell items. So you can click to enter, click on this to open up this drop down to be able to add a buy item, or you can scan a tag to restock something that you've entered previously. And there's a keyboard shortcut here that we can see if we hover for Shift Enter now that we're focused on the buy item. So you just enter inventory as normal. Your purchase price is your cost. That's how much you're going to pay for it. And your retail price is how much you're going to charge the next person to buy it from the store for that item. So Pricebook works very well with all of this and the category. But same concept, you would add your customer here. And by adding a customer, you'd be able to give them store credit instead of cash. And you can set up some really cool ratios here to incentivize store credit over cash in your settings. Can you attach a customer to a purchase after the fact? You cannot attach a customer to a purchase after the fact. There's a lot of complicated math that we do in the system at the time of the transaction relating to reward points, store credit, things like that. Those purchase totals that would not be able to be done, at least not in a simple, straightforward way, if you did that by adding a customer to the transaction after the fact. Those settings can change, those ratios and values would change, and that can lead to some funky behavior. So we have not explored completing that yet. Do you have any other requests to see how to start building a custom report? You're welcome. Ooh, this is probably a good one. Let's see what this is. No, that's not what I thought that was. Ooh, wish list report. I love this. So you can do a custom customer report. And if you, on either the consignor or the customer tabs, you can click into a customer and you can add customer notes. And so you can add notes in here and do all sorts of really cool things. And you can view those notes in the reports section. And something to keep in mind is that all of your consigners also have customer accounts. So if you want to get a report that has everyone in your store, including consigners, you'd want to run a custom customer report. And if you want to filter out people who are just customers and not consigners, you'd use this filter for is consignor to say is consignor is true. But what you can do in the custom customer report, that's a tongue twister, is you can do first, last name, the notes text, email, and phone number, so you have contact information. Excuse me. And if you are making notes in your customer or consignor accounts with things like wish list, if someone mentions to you something that they would like to see or purchase next time they come into the store, you can then use a custom filter for notes text is like wish. And then when you run this, you'd see everyone who has wish mentioned in here or wish list. And then you'll be able to see, ooh, this person's looking for diesel jeans. They're looking for diesel jeans. So is this person. And so you could then, if you got a pair in, you could then contact these people and reach out and let them know that something that's on their wish list is available in the store and encourage them to come in. This was a favorite rainy day or slow sales day activity for me to go through and look at our wish list and see if we couldn't entice some customers into the store. Daily inventory turnover report with consignors name, SKU, etc. What do you mean by turnover? What are you looking for? Items that have come in, items that have left, items sold. Okay. So if we do sold inventory, and you said consignor's name, SKU, so let's do SKU, consignor ID, consignor full name, sold date, let's do that, sold date, and maybe you want the item name, and maybe you want, since this is the amount, we'll do payout amount, and you can again do whatever you'd like for these fields and filters. I'm just building an example here. But payout amount is how much the consignor is going to receive. So it's the split taken into account with the amount that the item sold for. So we'll do quantity sold and we'll do sold price. And then we can say sold date is, and we can pick a specific date. There we go. And then you can also pick a specific consignor. So you can say consignor ID is, and we could start typing and pick whichever consignor we would like in here. So I'm hoping that this account did sell some items on that day, and there's our report. And if you wanted it for everyone, you can just get rid of that filter and then you can run it again. In this case, the results are the same, but maybe if we picked a different date, what did we do yesterday? Was Monday maybe a busier sales day? Nope. But that would allow you to get your full list of consignors in their inventory that sold that day. You're welcome. Inventory reports that we can pull for taxes. So for your tax information, I would thoroughly encourage you to use the pre-built reports, your sales report, and your payout totals reports, things like that. And we covered those types of reports last week in our pre-built report. Those will be a better fit for tax information. When running a report for a day to get the total number of items that sold, like 13 of a certain SKU sold, or does it only print where you need to count it all out? If they sold in the same transaction, it would have the total quantity that sold. Like if you sold 5 quantity of one thing. Otherwise, it'll give you the total of the number of results at the top. But otherwise, if it was you wanted to know how many sold for each consignor, and there were multiple consignors that sold stuff, you would need to count it up individually. That is also kind of in the wheelhouse of our Store Insights app, which we also covered in our pre-built reports webinar last week. And that recording should be available for you to view as well. I think that's already posted on our website. Monthly report showing converted inventory. All right, converted inventory. Let's see. Converted. Let's start in the right place. So we're going to go to custom reports. We're going to go to an inventory report, SKU, item name. So for those of you who might not know, converted status is a status that is applied to consigned items when they've reached their expire period, past their in grace period, and now they are converted, which means that they belong to the store, and any sales of those items will now go entirely to the store. This is an option you can configure in your settings in the back office. So not every store will have it set up to work that way. Some stores will instead just expire their inventory, which will mean that it'll stay in the consignor's account, and even if it sells an expired status, the sale will still go to the consignor. So in this case, we're going to want to see our status, filter by status. I guess you don't need to see that if you're filtering by it, but we'll do it just for instructional purposes today. Let's pull it over there. We might want to see some other information about it. We could do color and size. It would help if I could spell. We could do start date, so that's the beginning of the consignment period. We can do expire date. That's the end of the consignment period. And we could do on-hand quantity. So status is converted, and this is how you would get the report of all inventory that's in converted status. And then you have your start and expire dates here. If you want to see inventory that is newly in expired status, you could say expire date is after a certain date. And so these are items that would have converted after that date. You'll notice here this item, several of these items here, are not past their expire date, but they're already in converted status. The store can also manually change the status to converted, and that can happen on the consignment tab here. So we could click this item and change the status to converted. And you could use that for a variety of reasons. Maybe that consignor decided they wanted to donate the items to the store, or otherwise maybe the store purchased all of the stock flat out from that consignor for whatever reason. All sorts of reasons for that. You can also do it via a bulk inventory edit on the inventory tab. Oh, who the item originally belonged to? I think that was part of your original question. Consignor ID, and you can also do consignor first and last name. So you can do it that way. All right. We've only covered a couple of different report bases in here. There's multiple others. There's store credit history, there's payout activity, sold online inventory. We got a little bit into the customer and custom transaction, consignor account activity. All of those are really good places to explore. Hopefully you start to see now why I found this infinitely more interesting to play with than sweeping the floors. All right. We have run a little over time here, so I thank you for sticking with us and learning about the custom reports. Um, I don't know that we have another one currently scheduled, so when you fill out that exit survey, if you can let us know some topics that you'd love to learn about, that'll help us figure out which topic to cover next and when to schedule those. And I hope you enjoyed learning about reports. And again, if you didn't attend the webinar last week, we did the pre-built reports, and so that'll be all of the ones that you want to use for taxes and those important numbers, things like that. And there's a lot of options up here.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Bye.